Hey there everybody, Eric from Outer Limitless coming at you today with another video. Now today's one of those days where I have about a million things to do, but lucky for me, all of them revolve around being outside and, well, it's raining. So that leaves me today to have some fun, little bit of a project. Now here in my hands, I do have the full Opinel set, a 10 knife set here in carbon steel. These knives here, well, for me, are knives that I'll have to say, I've kind of been looking at these for a while and wondering where an Opinel would fit for me. Now, in full disclosure, I tend to look at these and say, well, there's not too much to them. I'm typically the hard use fixed blade type of guy. So having this sort of, small little semi-dainty folding knife in my hands, well, what is the purpose for this? I mean, the modern day folder to me is pretty much my go-to. I mean, what do I carry in my pocket all the time? Nice folding knife with a quality pocket clip. Just slides into place, easy, not too much to it. It does the bulk of the work that I need. So what is it about an Opinel that I need to get my hands on one? Well, it's a couple of things. First thing is, bottom line, it's a fairly classic style design. I also think that if you're serious about knives and a collector or an enthusiast, well, bottom line is experiment with different knives. Get different blades in your hands, try them for different reasons, and something like an Opinel, pretty much everybody could have at least one in their collection. But other than that, for me, I also realized it's a fairly nice and almost unique platform where this is just a blank canvas. There are all these different sizes of knives in here, each of which gives me the ability to use this like a blank canvas. So this set for me is going to be a bit of a project where I can actually give a little personalization to each one of these knives. So for me, it's really just a little bit of a hobby, a little bit of a craft, something I can do in some spare time, and a bit of an experiment. So what we're going to do today is look through this entire 10 knife set, talk about it in a little bit of detail. I'll let you in on some of the things I'm thinking I'm going to do to these, and that'll pretty much wrap it up for this video. And then potentially in future videos, depending on how this go, I may bring you in on a little of the creativity, some of the customization I do to each one of these. But with that said, I have a whole bunch to do and a whole bunch to share with you. And if you're interested in seeing a little bit more about what I'm about to get into, do me a favor, stay tuned. And so yes, here in my hands, the Opinel 10-piece kit. Now again, these here being in carbon steel, there is also a stainless option. I personally opted for the carbon for the one reason being then I can kind of play with patinas and different things on the blade steel. If I went with the stainless, it wouldn't leave these quite as customizable. So that's exactly why I went with the carbon. Now, for me, personally, I think if I was really a serious user of an Opinel, I would probably go with the stainless for a few reasons. First is food prep. Bottom line is carbon steel can kind of leave a little bit of a taste on some of your food. The stainless is going to be a little bit easier in that regard where it's not going to leave a taste on your food. It's also going to clean up a little bit easier. And obviously, you don't really need to worry so much about water and potential for rust. Now, I never worry about rust. I really don't care. And if my carbon steel knives leave a little bit of taste on my food, well, it is what it is. I really want the flexibility to put some patina on each one of these blades, so that's exactly why I went with the carbon. But here you'll see it comes in a nice presentation box. First thing is you'll see just, the name and the logo down in the corner, very simple. This looks to be, and I'm certainly not an expert, but if I could guess, I think this looks to be a type of an oak, maybe. Just judging that by the grain structure and the color of the wood. Now, if I wanted to go all the way to the nth degree, could I even personalize this case? Well, yeah, and honestly, I probably will. I think I'm going to basically customize this entire set, box and all, make it a project, have some fun, and just do some really cool things. So again, talking about a blank slate, that's exactly what I get here with the presentation box. But now as we open this up and getting into it, first thing you'll see, just a couple of little clasps here, so little brass clasps, and on the back side some brass hinges, so very straightforward and simple. And on the inside here you'll see the presentation. So again, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 knives here of various sizes. Now, to me, in my initial impression, some of these are a little more useful than others, where some of these I kind of scratch my head and say, well, where would that apply? When would I actually use these? And what does it mean for you? And I know each and every one of you is going to have some opinions on this, so I am curious to hear a little bit from you and your thought process as we make it through here. Now, first thing you'll see, you notice that, I kind of had this collapsed while it was in here, but when you get this for the first time, the presentation pretty much has the largest of the blades fully displayed here. And you'll see this is sort of just a little bit of like a felt line, just a real lightly felt lined interior here. It's kind of just a, molded plastic and holds all the knives directly in place. Now again, as I mentioned, imagine each and every one of these having a little bit of a different look, a different feel, maybe a different color, different stain, different technique applied to them and fully personalized. That's what I'm going for, and this entire thing can just be fun. And maybe down the line, well, who knows? You get to the point where you say, well, I just need a little, nice compartment or a box to hold some things other than the knives. I mean, this is a very useful piece. So for me, personalizing this entire thing, you'll notice I can really practice some different techniques, have some fun on all surfaces. Just a nice, large, open, blank canvas. Very, very cool. But the main thing here is to talk about the knives. So here, taking a look, we'll go right down and through here, the largest of the bunch. As we look up close on the collar here, so this is the lock collar. As you see, this swivels to lock into place. Very simple. But they're number 12. So the largest of the bunch here, number 12, this to me is going to be very, very useful. Now, this is giving you pretty much a full-handled grip as you look here, really filling out my hands nicely. And as I lock the blade into place, this is going to be fairly stout, no rock there, which is nice and feels really nice in my hands. Now, I can see this doing some excellent carving, some food prep, different tasks, bushcraft tasks, but this is definitely getting closer to the size of more of a sort of survival knife, fixed blade, typical hunting knife, something in that line. Which if we look and compare it here, it is actually even longer than a Mora Bushcraft. And even to the point where here I have my T17.5L. The .5L having the longer handle. You'll see here it is a little more proportionate here to the Opinel number 12. So this Opinel number 12, this is not a small knife by any means. In fact, it is fairly large and is going to have a nice large handle. So if you're somebody with, larger hands, or you just want a little extra grip or purchase on the knife, this number 12 is going to do it for you. But now sliding down here, well, this is the number 10. So again, you'll see the lock collar on these is very, very smart design. Extremely simple. Very, very simple. Literally, this just rocks. And as it does, you have a little bevel here, sort of and I'm not going to say a chamfer, it's a beveled collar that as you rotate is just tightening up on the back side of the stock on the blade down above that secondary bevel there. And actually, as I look at it, it's an extreme slight micro bevel. You can see it kind of just reflecting a little bit in the light there. A very subtle micro bevel. These aren't exactly zero ground, but they are darn close. And all of these being a full flat ground design. Nice satin finish. Nice overall construction. You can see here their logo, nicely laser etched in there, and very nicely done. A little bit of a nail nick on each one of these, so all the construction across the board pretty much the same as we go through the entire lineup, but again here the number 10. Now as we compare it here against the Mora Bushcraft, much more in line with the size of this knife. So if you're looking for something sort of in that typical Mora size, that's going to be your Opinel number 10. Now again, you get a full grip here as you look. Nice purchase on this and a little bit of a flare on the back side, which is definitely nice. Aids in a little bit of thickening up the grip there and feels good in the hands, nice and indexed well. And obviously a broomstick style handle, but at the same time you get a little bit of a flare right through the palm. Thins out a little bit, but then just a couple of nice ergonomic points. I do have to say, overall, the Opinel handles do feel wonderful in the hand. You do end up with a little bit of a flare here into that back side. So if you were going reverse grip, not that I intend on doing a lot of stabbing, and especially with a folding knife, but you will see that does create a bit of a hot spot. So if you are looking for some reverse grip, that's not going to be the best for you, but in a pinch, if you had to, and you were using this for some level of a bit of self-defense, you could certainly do so. Not really intended for reverse grip or anything like that, but bottom line is, you can do it. It's just going to be a little bit uncomfortable. But overall, the main grip and your typical grips with this knife feeling very, very nice. A little bit of sort of alternate grips for, push cuts and things like that, and a little bit of chest pulls. That's going to work out nicely, but again here, the Opinel number 10. Now next in the lineup, this is the number 9. So we're getting a little bit smaller here, a little more compact, yet at the same time perfectly capable. And just displaying here the 10 versus the 9, I mean, subtle differences in the size at this point. They're not drastically different, but definitely a little bit of subtlety. Now here with the number 9, again, nice full grip. This is getting to be, I would say, more towards a nice size EDC knife. So if you want something that's going to be sort of a mid-size everyday carry, a little bit slim, a little bit compact, but at the same time big enough to do some fairly substantial work, this number 9 might be the one for you. Now, granted, the blade depth is going to vary, but just for a size comparison, well, we have here a Battle Horse knife Woodsman Pro, and you can see the overall geometry and dimensions in terms of the length of the blade and handle are roughly the same. I mean, fairly close. Going back to the number 10, the number 10's actually just a little bit longer, but then again here, the number 9, little more in line. So something like this Battle Horse Knives Woodsman Pro, here you'll see the Opinel number 9 is going to be right around that size, pretty darn close. Which now leads me to the number 8. So here, this is the number 8. Now the number 8, I think a lot of people might say is the most popular size. I'm not too sure, but that's just the impression that I get, and I can kind of see why. This is starting to strike the middle ground where it's really the size of more like a pocket knife. So again, going with that EDC philosophy, well, for example, here we have a Boker AK-47 Kalashnikov. Now here, as we take a look here, you'll see very similar in overall size. Now I'm going to keep saying the blade depth on the Opinel, definitely not as deep as most other knives. It's a fairly shallow depth. However, I am talking really in terms of the length of the handle and the length of the blade. So here you can see a fairly reasonable comparison. And both of these with a little bit of a clip point. That's what you will notice about these Opinels. They're like sort of a drop point, but at the same time, sort of more like a clip. Very cool. And actually, as we look at these other ones, just to point out that all of them fairly similar in terms of where they start to sort of curve down. So just before that nail nick, just right there, coming down into a little bit of a clip. Nice little sweep in the belly. That's another thing. Just very, very subtle, but the slightest bit of a recurve there. And as you look at the edge, you're not really going to be able to tell too much. However, what I can tell you is if you put this down on a flat surface, you get a little bit of daylight beneath there. So there is just a real subtle recurve. And so if it's not the number 8 that's the most popular, it's the number 7. But here, the number 7, again, just getting mighty small, little bit dainty. Now, not a problem. I think this is going to do plenty of reasonable work, but at the same time, just getting to be a much smaller package. Now, real quick, just comparing this against another knife we've looked at in the past, here we have the Bestech Knives Heidi Blacksmith number 1. This is a very close comparison in terms of the overall, I would say just general geometry, the handle length, the blade length, some similarities in terms of the fact that this is just a little bit of a clip. Now again, I can't get past the fact that the Opinels do have a shallower blade depth, but just in terms of the overall length, you'll see fairly similar. Now the Opinel number 7 I could see definitely being a nice little companion next to a larger blade. If you really wanted something that was small and compact, sits on your belt, is overall not assuming, it's not overly sized, it's fairly easy. This would actually fit in most pockets with ease. The number 7 here being a nice, small, compact, and capable knife. Now you'll see, again, I'm still working with that full 4-fingered grip, which is nice and gives you the ability to get your thumb right up on top of the spine if you need to do a little bit of controlled work. You can also reach up on the blade a little bit more. Definitely a nice, comfortable grip there, and gives you the ability to do some really nice controlled work if you need to. I could see using this if you had to dig out a splinter or something like that. So very nice. This Opinel number 7 to me is something that should probably just come with you on a trip. Maybe you slide it inside. I'd say maybe like a medical kit or something like that. This Opinel number 7, to me, this is going to be very useful. And now number 6, well, let's just say maybe you wanted something a little more compact. I mean, we're getting pretty small at this point. I mean, very dainty. Really, this is getting to be mighty, mighty small. I mean, just a fairly small, compact knife. We are on the verge of losing our 4th finger here. So you'll see we're getting into more of like a 3-fingered grip, which here you'll see is more in line with my TFK T17.3. That was the actual reason for my T17.3. I wanted that 3-fingered grip that indexes right in the meat of your palm and gives you a capable, compact knife. Well, so here with the Opinel, the number 6, very similar. Now, the one thing I am going to say, which is a little bit of a downfall, but something I can probably correct, is on the pommel, again, just a little sharp here. So if that's rounded out just a little bit, that's going to fit nicely in the meat of your palm and not leave any hot spots. But that to me right there is a little sharp for the intended grip on this, unless you have smaller hands. But for me, with a large size hand, you can see that's going to need to be rounded out. But down here, that little bit of flare actually helps. Doesn't bother me too much. I might soften that up just a bit. But you can see here why these Opinels are going to make a cool, customizable project, because each one has its own little caveats and things you need to pay attention to, some design elements you can go in, little bit of, I'm not going to say fit and finish, but really some functional finish that you can get into if that's what you so please. And so now bringing in the number 5, well, that number 5, wow, very, very small. So now we're getting to the point where I personally think that for the most part in what I'm going to be doing, I'm losing a little bit of functionality. Now, this number 5 here, very small. Let's just rope in an Azula. Well, at this point, it's smaller than the Azula. In fact, the Azula really closer to the number 6. So as you see, the Essie Azula here, very similar in proportions to the Opinel number 6. But that 5, a mighty dainty little tiny knife. The question is, and what I'm starting to ask all of you, where do these fall into play? Now again, here you go with the number 5 just rocking that collar. Well, nope, there's no rocking that collar. This is where you start to get into more of a slip joint design. There is no collar for protection, so you need to be a little bit careful with how you use this, but with a smaller knife, I wouldn't expect that you'd be doing anything of substantial hard use. Could you use this for carving? Of course. Little bit of food prep? Maybe. To me, this is starting to get more to a little bit of, and I would say, medical use. So cutting medical tape, little supplies, things like that. Again, getting some real controlled action, digging out a splinter. Maybe you just need to cut a little bit of cordage. This to me is something you could slip into almost any little kit without any difficulty. It's not going to take up too much in the way of space. It's going to be fairly compact. And for me, in terms of this being a blank slate, well, I'm losing a little bit of real estate, but there's definitely a lot of creativity that could go into this. And so here to wrap this up, the Opinel 4, 3, and 2. Very, very small, extremely dainty. And I know there's somebody who's going to weigh in that says, oh, the number 2 is the most useful knife of the entire bunch. But to me, I just don't see it. I don't understand really what these are for. So weigh in the comments. I'm curious. I mean, who uses the 4, 3, and 2? What do you use them for? Where do they fit? What is the purpose? I mean, for me, again, just a little small for my needs, but it's also going to be cool for a customizable project. Now, bottom line is, this is kind of like those Russian dolls where you end up with, like, you know, the dolls all fitting inside each other, and you get down to that, like, super tiny little one that still has a ton of detail. I mean, if I'm good and I can get some good detail on this, it'll be cool for a project. But in terms of functional use, I mean, where do these come into play? I'm curious, so weigh in the comments below. And so here, just looking at these all lined up to give you a relative size comparison, here you'll see the number 12 ringing in just a little bit over 11 inches. The 10 here ringing in at around 9 inches. Here you have the number 9 at roughly 8.5 inches. The 8 ringing in at around 7.5 inches. The 7 at 7.25 inches. The 6 at 6.5 inches. The 5 at 5.5 inches. The 4 3/4 inches. The 3 at 4 inches, and that number 2 there, well, that tiny little guy, 3.25 inches. But overall, what are you gonna do with these? I'm not too sure. But there you have it, the Opinel lineup, all lined up there for your size reference. Very nice in carbon steel, and for me, a blank canvas. So all right, guys, there you have it. A look at the Opinel Carbon lineup, the full set. Now, that's not all of the knives or tools in this folding lineup. There are other things like saws, there's other knife designs, there's actually also other handle materials, and obviously the different steels. So very, very cool. Now for me, again, it's a little bit of a project and an art as much as it's going to be functional for me while I'm out in the outdoors, but I know for each and every one of these, I will find a place to use them. I go back to, well, where are you going to use the 4 and 3 and 2? Are they really practical? Hard to say, but if they are, weigh in the comments below. I would love to hear it, but all the rest of them, I mean, the 12, nice and stout. I mean, this thing is definitely going to perform. Nice, full handle. Gives me really the middle ground between a folding knife and a fixed blade. Nice and stout, good quality, capable, and I can tell you that's gonna spark on a ferro rod like crazy. Just good overall capability with a number of these Opinels. And so that draws this video to a conclusion. In the future, I might get into some of the actual customizability in a video. It's just hard to say. Depends on time, depends on what I'm trying to get done, but time will tell. If that's the case, this might become a little bit of a series. Maybe by the end of it, I've pretty much done the whole thing on film. Like I said, I don't know. But today, on a rainy day, an awesome opportunity to look at some classic style bushcraft knives. So all right, guys, thanks for stopping by. I hope you liked what you saw. I hope you found it a little bit informative. If you like what you saw, please like, share, and subscribe. And as always, thanks for stopping by. Take care now. I'll see you soon.